Hi, Redneck Computer Geek here. Today we're going to be doing the last video on our ATLTF build-off and our closing video on it. Sorry about the voice and sound like Fat Albert from the old cartoon. If you don't know who Fat Albert is, unfortunately you grew up in America after it became all politically correct. Another thing that's very American that we're trying to bring back here on this channel is building off-road tractors and building homebrew tractors. Back in the 70s, it used to be you could get a Popular Mechanics magazine, you could go into a junkyard, you could find certain parts, and you could be able to build certain things. And that's one thing that we strive to bring back here on the Redneck Computer Geek channel. Alright, so first prerequisite is you got to be able to sit here and you got to be able to, without touching the engine, start the thing up. We got our kill toggle switch that we have to go and set over here. I did a how-to video on that. I'll put it in the link. And here we go. So as you can see, obviously it's got headlights and it's got taillights added. And what that is that's actually pod lights, and underneath they're aux beam 4-inch pods. They're amazing, I love them. But what I did was I made it so the hood was fully removable. I wanted something more race car look. I wanted something more, you know, dune buggy look. I wanted to be able to go and take the whole entire hood assembly off at a moment's notice and be able to access everything in one easy to get to package. So the first thing we'll start off with is the race car gauges, or whatever you want to call them, because race car. And all it is an inverted toggle switch so that it stays in the open position when it's like this, and it closes in order to kill the coil. Standard engine start. We got our click over that's currently hooked to our headlights, and we've got accessory toggles to be able to do other stuff. Like if we had a winch with a remote control, we could put the solenoid for the winch onto a toggle or a relay, something like that. So this is future expansion for later. We've got our winch controls up here. We'll demonstrate that in a little bit when we go to take a look at the underside of the front I-beam suspension. We've got our standard Mr. Gasket pedal. This is what I've used on all my builds. I love them. You can pick them up on Amazon, usually about 50 bucks. They're great. These are a newer version of the X-Trax. They're 16s, and I love them. They match really good with the bear claws that are on the rear behind them. Let me see if I can catch those. There's the bear claw tread. So the X-Trax have a nice solid tread on the newer version. I like it. They hold really well. I have a feeling that these little curved nubs are the reason why they give a little bit in the turns, but they're still really nice. These are the 4-inch aux beam pods. Like I said, I love them. They're awesome. You can submerge them. And they have quite a bit of wiring lead that comes off the back of them. It's a good solid foot almost. So that runs into this, and then this runs to this piece of speaker wire here. And that piece of speaker wire runs all the way to the back for the little red eyes on the back. These right here. Now the reason why I chose speaker wire is because it stands out. Why would I want speaker wire that stands out? Because in the case of an emergency, if you have speaker wire, you can rip it out, easily be able to rip the ends off and do something different with it. It cuts with a knife. It's easy to use in emergencies. That's why I like having a piece of it somewhere for something that's unnecessary in an emergency. Now we got our red top that we put. Now the plan was red, white, and blue across it, but the idea was that anything that is red is something you shouldn't see unless something went wrong. You shouldn't see the engine, you shouldn't see the filter, you shouldn't see the inside of the red on the tires, and if you see the red skid plate, then obviously something went really wrong. I went with a Champion winch because of the fact that I wanted something a little different. I've blown out several different super winches because they do not have this reinforcement across the front and across the back, so they splay open when you put any actual force on them if you're plowing or anything like that. So I went with this Champion. We'll see how well that theory ends up holding up. I do not like the Fairlead that came with it. I'm going to end up swapping this Fairlead out for a Warren plow gear Fairlead. I deliberately made sure the bolt pattern is there in order to swap it out, but it'll work for what we need right now. So we've got our coilovers. We'll take a look at that more. But this is my snorkel, my controversial snorkel. I've currently run the tractor for over 6 hours now worth of use, and it works just fine. There's no real kickback or anything in it. As you can see, it's still nice and solid. It's warmed up. It's working really well. Now, there's been a lot of controversy about the idea that this is going to get hot enough in order to melt the plastic. Well, the problem is, engineering-wise, this was already a certain type of plastic. By the time this gets hot enough in order to be able to melt the plastic, you're going to end up with gas atomizing, and you got more problems there than you do just plastic melting. So we should be all set with this. People have built PVC intakes for years. That should be just fine. We've got our stock clutch hooked up to our stock brakes. Unfortunately, my original idea for brakes didn't end up working because of some issues on placement. We're going to revisit that. And then up here we've got this. This is going to end up being our choke cable, but I'm looking for a softer cable type in order to go in here because this is just too rugged and it ends up bending and eventually snapping these. So that's going to get upgraded in the future. On the back, we got the original seat from Maine Mud Mower. If you've ever seen that on YouTube, we let a few parts end up living on. We've got the original Maine Mud Mower seat. We've got the 22 by 11 by 8 bear claws. The X-Tracks, I had a set of those on Maine Mud Mower. These are a new version and new bearings on the inside. These are all bearinged out. Everything has been re-welded. I did a how-to video on this, on being able to put bearings into these snowblower tires so you can run them on the spindles for your lawn tractor. I really recommend this. It makes a giant difference when you're driving. You can really feel it. It's worth it. So the idea was to be able to create a suspension system that's similar to the I-beam two-wheel drive suspension that's in a Ford Ranger. So as you can see, the I-beam right here comes forward and it's mounted solidly to the frame, and then comes forward in order to come into there for your cross over to here. It's got heim joints up above that are fully upgraded. Then from there up top, you've got your coils. Your coils are made so that they go specifically straight up and down. They don't articulate in and out at all. That's part of the way that an I-beam suspension works. We've got our front skid plate here. This is actually out of the original Maine Mud Mower. This is actually where the shift selector would have cycled in between. This is actually the original protector for the exhaust. It's just simply been dropped down from the frame down to under there. And I did this setup on purpose because I wanted the potential to be able to drill through these sidewalls and put a rod straight through in order to potentially put a snowblower, plow gear, you name it, on the front of it. Now the steering has been upgraded to 2nd gen steering. That's this piece in here. That's your steering box up above. It originally came with 1st gen steering, which is known for blowing out, rotting, doing all kinds of other stupid things. Also, it's been upgraded to heim joints. There's a heim joint there, and the original rod was cut down. I had to take 2.5 inches off the end of the rod. There's then a piece of tube welded on, then the heim joint, and then the lock nuts so that you can be able to set your distances. That goes into there. The original crossbar here goes in. It is the original bar, but with a piece welded on. One of the first things that you will find with these Craftsmans is that they will bend right about here in the center, and it will drive it all the way up through into your pulley and do all kinds of stupid things once you start modifying them. This is the first mod you should ever do if you ever want to off-road one of these Craftsmans. And as I said, the inside of the tires, you can see here clearly yet again, I welded in a piece and I put bearings into the tires. And then back here, we have the original clutch. This is a lawn tractor front pulley assembly, just flipped. So the original pulley is cut out, and then the deck pulley, as you can see, is cut off and then put up above. And then back here, we've got just our regular Spicer transmission. There's nothing special about it whatsoever, with a zinc locker on the inside. Here's our shifter panel that comes down through in order to do our selector. Now I will eventually be taking these pieces here and putting in upgraded gussets on them because they're a common spot to break. And as you can see while we're talking about brakes, here's our original braking system. It does work in 1st through 4th gear, but if you're going above about 20 miles an hour, it takes you quite a bit of coasting in order to slow down. So keep that in mind if you're building one of these. The rear pulley is actually originally a deck pulley. It's a 5.5. The front is also originally a deck drive pulley at a 5.5. And the belt system, because of the fact that I am using a slightly larger V-idler, is a 93-inch belt. And right in here, you can see this bolt hole right here. Eventually, when this belt ends up stretching, you can put a small little 3-inch V-idler right there, and that'll take up the slack. The Blizzard is complete as far as the ATLTF is concerned, and as far as I'm concerned for this year. I'll end up tinkering with a few different things on it, and I'll end up putting a rear rack on it. I may end up mounting a snowblower to the front and stuff like that, and I'll post follow-up videos on that. Thank you for subscribing, thank you for sharing my videos, and thank you for supporting my channel. Have a good day.